my name's Briana Gleizer. I'm a student at the University of Maryland studying animal science, and today I will be interviewing Mr. Mike Poe, who is a farrier, and he works with the horses on our campus farm. Hi, Mr. Poe. How are you today?
I'm very, very well.
Good. That's good to hear. Do you want to start by giving us a little background about yourself?
Sure. I started out with horses. My family got them when I was a kid, and I went to college originally deciding that I was going to be a veterinarian. And then I got into college and realized that it was not what I really wanted to do. Had a good opportunity show up to learn how to shoe horses and took advantage of it. I never thought it would be a career, but it's been 21 years since I did that, and I'm still going. So it worked out.
That's awesome. I'm actually in school to become a veterinarian, so hopefully that works out for me. So yeah, I guess we can start with the interview questions. So for starters, why did you choose to become a farrier?
So I was in a position where I was going to have to drop out of college. I wasn't able to afford it anymore, and financial aid didn't come through the way that I hoped it would. I had a very good friend who was marrying a girl whose father ran a horseshoeing school. They originally hired me as a janitor and gave me basically free tuition to the school. And I thought to myself that it would be a really good way, like it'd be a good skill set to have, not necessarily that I'd be a farrier, that if I could get a job managing a horse farm or anything related to horses, that knowing how to shoe horses would just give me an edge to be hired. And then I got into it and was like, wow, this is kind of fun. I get to play with horses and fire and people pay me. And I stuck with it.
That's really awesome and super impressive that you kept going. That's a really good thing for people to know. Just like, don't give up, keep following your dreams, even if it's not like what you planned from the beginning. So that's really awesome. What does a daily day look like for you? Are some days busier than others? Do you like other days better than others?
So a typical day is I go out. So it's interesting. I was thinking about where do I do this interview from, and I figured that the place that I'm at the most would be a good idea. I'm in my truck. So this is my office and my shop. It goes everywhere. So a typical day for me has about 3 to 4 stops in it. They're usually within 15 minutes of each other. The distance from where I sleep at night is kind of irrelevant. It's just that we have all the work in the same place. If all the work's together, then the job's easier. But a typical day, I'll shoe between 5 and 6 sets of shoes, so that's all 4 feet, or a mixture of trims and front shoes that kind of equals that amount of work. So yeah, and then there are some days I have, every Wednesday I'm at the same account and I'm there all day. So just depending on the week or the day, depends on what my schedule's like.
Very cool. Okay. So for the next question, what is like the educational requirement to become a farrier, and like about how long do you have to go to school if you do to become one?
So that's a geographically specific question. So
Okay.
we're in the United States. I'll talk about what it takes to be a farrier in the U.S. first, and then I'll talk about other places.
Yeah.
So in the U.S., it takes nothing. Anybody can be a horseshoer. There is no regulation. There's no minimum standard that is required, like by law or even by the industry itself. We're completely unregulated. But there are a number of trade schools in the U.S. They vary in duration from, like, I want to say there's one that has a 6 or an 8 week course is the shortest, where you can actually know what you're doing at all, on up to a 2-year course. I think there's a couple like community colleges out west that have farrier courses. Excuse me. And so as far as like formal education, that's kind of the beginning and end. when you get to after you've learned, it's typically a good idea to apprentice. That's something that I didn't do and I regret, is I didn't have an apprenticeship with one farrier who kind of dried me off after I'd learned how to be a farrier. I have since had roughly half a dozen apprentices that ride with me, and that's a specific thing too, is being an apprentice and not a helper. So the people that ride with me, when they first start, they're a liability more than an asset, because I'm teaching them. They slow me down, they mess up sometimes, mistakes happen. But eventually they become a massive asset, that they make me money, they keep me from being as tired, and in turn they get a good head start on their career. So that's the US. That's everything from the worst case to the best case in the US. In the UK, registration is mandatory. You have to pass a minimum standard in order to shoe horses in the United Kingdom. And the course that you go through in order to prepare you for that is 4 years of college plus apprenticeship.
Wow.
And they're actually, they mix together. So it's not 4 solid years of college and then you apprentice. It's, you go to school for a 3-month block, and then you leave for 3 months and you're with your boss in your apprenticeship, and then you go back for maybe 3 weeks, and then you're back to your boss for a few months, and that prepares them to sit the diploma exam. And once they have their diploma, they can become registered and work on their own.
Very interesting. Wow, I did not know there was such a big difference between the UK and the US. But going off of that, so when you do work on horseshoes and everything, are there specific signs that you look for to make sure like the horse is healthy, the hoof is healthy, like before you attach the shoes? Like, what are some signs that you look for when you're doing your job?
So the basic thing is I look for a healthy horse, like, some bloom to the coat, a horse that's kind of bright-eyed, that's, head isn't down, they don't look kind of rough. But as far as their feet go, you can break the feet into like 3 basic regions: the frog, sole, and hoof wall. And if we have a really solid looking hoof wall, something that actually looks like it has some substance, then we can call that pretty healthy. And if the frog and sole are exfoliating, so just like us, our skin sloughs off and exfoliates, the bottom of the horse's foot does the same thing. And if we have nice, healthy exfoliation, not excessive, but not retaining either, then we've got a pretty healthy foot, pretty healthy horse typically. With horses, and this is kind of getting out of my lane, is, all mammals, we have a nutritional hierarchy. So it's where nutrition goes first and last. Like the brain gets precedence over everything. Your brain has to eat before anything else does. The last thing that gets to eat on a horse is the foot. So if the hooves are unhealthy, it might just mean that they need a little something extra.
Okay.
But likewise, if you see nice healthy hooves, that means you have a nice healthy horse. So they're an indicator that everything is kind of ticking right along if the hooves are healthy.
Have you ever had to make like a special shoe for a horse that like had a hoof that wasn't like considered perfect?
Lots. That's actually kind of that's the thing that I do a lot of, is I deal with horses that have either pathological conditions that are making them unhealthy, or have lamenesses, just some sort of a problem that can be assisted by what I make for them or what I fit on them.
That's very cool. Alrighty. So for the next question, on average, what would you say that a starting salary for a farrier is, and then for someone who's more experienced and have a good amount of clients?
So actually, figured up a correlation, and it's just a correlation, is if you look at the median price per square foot for real estate in an area, that will tell you roughly what it costs to have a set of shoes put on a horse. As far as what a farrier makes, it really is so personal. Because for me, my business makes a pretty good amount of money, but that's not what I get paid.
Right.
So I'm a sole proprietor, but I'm a LLC subchapter S, which I am not an accountant. I do what my accountant tells me because she's really good at this, or at that. I'm not. But yeah, you can. I know some farriers who make, upwards of $500,000 a year.
Wow.
I know some farriers who they are perfectly well qualified, very, very skilled, but they choose to live in an area with a more depressed economy because of whatever reason. That's where they're from. It's a beautiful place to live, but not a very lucrative place to live. There's any number of reasons why they'll live there, who will struggle to make $50K a year. So it's really dependent, because all the different regions in this country that have better markets for a farrier or worse markets for a farrier, we all pay the same to buy shoes and steel and nails and pads and all the consumable items we use. The cost of a pickup to work out of, or a van, or whatever you want to work out of, it varies region to region, but not that much. I mean, the manufacturer gets what they get. So because our costs are pretty standardized, it makes it tough to even estimate like what's the averages. I can say though that someone who is skilled and kind of dedicated to this, and not a complete fool of a businessman or woman or anything, you can make a good living doing this job.
That's very good to know. Yeah, that's really cool. So would you say it's like because different states have like different populations of horses, so like the more density of horses probably the farriers have a better opportunity to
it's somewhat associated with the horse population. It also is the actual economic status of the area you're in. Okay. So where we're at here in Maryland, I'm based halfway between Baltimore and DC, and I get into the Annapolis area and over towards Frederick almost, and that's a very we're almost recession proof. When the rest of the country is struggling economically, because we house the federal government, we have a lot of support industries around the federal government. I essentially become a support industry because I service a luxury item. No one needs to own a horse anymore. It's something that you have because it's fun, or you enjoy it, or some people can make it into a business, but not many. But because of that, there's plenty of work here. There's always going to be horses where a lot of people are, because the more people there are, typically the better economically the region is, the better off economically the region is. And that economic prosperity makes it much more lucrative for a farrier.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for answering that question. Okay, so for the next question, what is the most challenging aspect of your job, and how does that impact how you see being a farrier?
For me, the hardest part for me is because I work on a lot of horses with problems. That means that I work on horses where we can't do any more to help, and they have to be euthanized. I wear my heart on my sleeve a lot when it comes to the job, and I lose horses from time to time. And when a horse in my book dies, that crushes me just a little bit. And it's usually because I feel like I couldn't do more. The truth is, it was the horse's time to go. Usually when we lose a horse, it's because we've exhausted every option that we can conceive of. but I still feel that inadequacy, that I could have helped more. I could have done more. Maybe we could have tried this. So yeah, for me, that's the hardest part. I think other farriers might say that it's dealing with clientele, having to, accommodate someone who owns a horse, because that can be a whole range of people, from exceptionally professional to the rank novice who doesn't know anything. And we have to provide the same treatment to every horse we do.
Do you have any advice for anyone interested in being a farrier on how to deal with the emotions that come with potentially losing a horse?
Yeah, it's accept it. Accept that you're going to be upset by it, and that being upset by it is an indicator that you do care and you do your job well. I think that, and I know plenty of excellent farriers who are better at shrugging it off than I am, but learning to shrug it off and to realize that it has nothing to do with you or your inadequacies, or it has nothing to do with your skill sets or your skill level. It's just the way that it goes. The best thing we can do is to improve the quality of life for the horses that we work on while we have the opportunity.
For sure. That's a very good piece of advice. So another question, or in general, do you have any general advice for someone who wants to become a farrier? Like if you could just give one good piece of advice.
It's the one that I don't think I followed. It's to don't worry about making money when you start. To learn to be a farrier in the U.S. is very inexpensive. Even our trade schools, it's not a lot of tuition. It's not what the average college student pays for a semester, let alone a year of tuition. So for that, you can have the dividend of a very lucrative business. So spend the first couple years after you learn, after you get out of that school, make just enough to pay your bills, but spend a lot of time learning. Whether that is learning through apprenticeship or just learning through getting in every truck you can. I've got a very good friend who you couldn't say apprenticed with anyone, but he rode with every farrier he could. If he had a day off, he was in somebody's truck learning.
Right.
And so doing that, competing, we have competitions in this country. We have competitions all over the world, but going to farrier competitions and learning how to be better at the practical aspect of your business, as well as learning through that practical aspect to be stronger in your theory. Like learning about, hey, I'm making this crazy shoe during a contest. Why? What's that shoe for?
Right.
Looking up the pathology that it treats, learning about what causes that, going chasing it all the way down the rabbit hole until you get a better understanding of the industry of the job. Dedicating yourself to learning early is much easier. It's a much smoother transition to go from being a novice into being more experienced and being more qualified.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. When you do work with horses, do you tend to see more of a specific breed, or are you more of every type of horse kind of?
I work mostly on pleasure and show horses. So horses people ride on the weekend, or horses that actually do have a job of showing. Like they have to go out and win ribbons or perform. A small part of my business is working on lame horses. Most of those horses that I work on that are pleasure or show horses, they all have problems. There's no human athlete who doesn't have a team of people who keep them going, right? So it's a similar thing with an equine athlete. But the primary objective of shoeing those horses is not dealing with the lameness. So I have a very small amount where we're just dealing with the lameness. Some of those horses, they just come to me for 2 or 3 shoeings, and then my job's done. They can go back to their old farrier and get by again and be okay. But as far as breeds, no, I don't really work on any specific breed. And I've done about every discipline except for the gait enhanced horses. So Tennessee Walkers and the pad stack padded horses. I don't really have any experience with those.
Very cool. That's awesome how you've been able to have experience with so many different horses. I just recently went to the campus farm for my first in-person lab, and I worked with Millie, who's one of our horses. I'm sure you know Millie, and it was so much fun. She's great. All right, so I have one more question for you to finish up our interview. So what personal qualities do you think a person should have to become and be a successful farrier?
You have to be self-motivated, period. There is no one who makes me answer the phone or schedule appointments. There's no one who makes me be on time. I don't have someone who, if I don't show up on time, is going to fire me, because God bless horse owners. They put up with so much, because I've built, I've had a business in a bunch of different places, and every business I've ever had, the quality that I exhibit that they love is that I think that 15 minutes early is on time. If your appointment is at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be there at 1:45. You don't have to be ready for me until 2. But 1:45 is when I need to be there so that all my stuff is set up. I'm ready to go as soon as the horse stands in front of me. So if you're not self-motivated, if getting up in the morning is a struggle for you, if being on time is a struggle for you, this might not be the job. And really any singly employed job might not be the job, because there is no one else I answer to. My HR department is me. This is me. I'm the CFO of this company. I'm the CEO of this company.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I'm the same way though. If I'm not 10 or 15 minutes early, then I'm late. So
Excellent. That'll do you well.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and helping me and my fellow students learn so much more about the horse industry and a farrier in general. And I just really appreciate it. So thank you for taking that time to do that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.